Folks, welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to the CEG C-Level Connect series number 24. Today is Sunday, 16th of July. It's 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time. A few guidelines for those of you who are joining this program for the first time. Um, Please stay muted during the fireside chat session. We'd like you to stay muted. You can turn off your video for now. Somewhere during the middle of the program, I will request you to turn on the video because we want to take a screenshot of all the attendees in the program. So around the 8:30, 8:35 mark, I will make a request for you guys to open up your video to take a picture. This entire session is recorded and the recording will be available on our public YouTube channel CEG Connect. All the previous 23 programs, 22 programs, one of the programs we couldn't upload, but 22 previous programs are there on the YouTube channel. During the presentation, if you have any questions for either the host or the guest, you can use the Slido program, and I will introduce Slido in a couple of minutes in the next few slides. There will also be periodic live polls in Slido. These are polls that I can push questions to all the audience. Please participate in the poll. These are all mostly multiple choice questions or questions with a small text. It helps us to get an idea about how the program is going, also get some ideas on how to conduct the programs in the future. The first question is already there in Slido right now, so I'll tell you how to get to Slido. And during the Q&A sessions, if your name is called, please unmute to ask your question. So Slido allows you to participate in the polls as well as to put questions for both the host and the guest speaker. And when your question needs to be asked, I will tell you to ask the question yourself, and you can ask the question after opening audio and video. If the questions are repetitive in nature, then I may ask the question on behalf of all of the people. Okay. So today's guest speaker is Miss Charu Srinivasan. Charu is actually based in Hyderabad, India, but today she is coming to us live from Seattle, Washington State. She is from the 1990 batch of computer science engineering. Charu is one of the very few corporate vice presidents. I think corporate vice president in Seattle in Microsoft is a very senior position. I understand there are not very many positions above that. So she's a corporate vice president of engineering, Azure Core, Cloud, and All India Development Center site leader. She has a lot of things under her portfolio, both in Seattle as well as in Hyderabad. So looking forward to it, Charu. Thank you for joining. I'll be the host. Jaitesh, my friend, hasn't joined yet. If he joins, he'll be the co-host. And Partha is my tech support, who is helping us with all the portal recording, etc. All that. In terms of Slido, the way to enter into Slido is to go to any device you might have, laptop, desktop, phone, or a tablet, and you can type in any browser. Just type slido.com. When you type in slido.com, you'll get a screen, and there will be asking for a code. You can type in the code 2154493. 2154493. In the Google Meet chat box, we'll have this number flash regularly. So in case people who don't remember, you can put this. So go to slido.com in any browser, in any device, and in the place where it asks for a code, put 2154493. When you do that, you'll get into a screen like this. There will be a Q&A tab and a polls tab. In the polls tab, questions will be coming from us. So please participate in the polls by answering them. And if you want to ask a question, you can go to the Q&A tab and type your question. We would prefer you to put the question with your name. There is an anonymous option as well as your named option. To the extent possible, we would like you to put the question with your name on it. But if you choose not to put, we can't do anything about it. So it's your choice. But please do your best to put your name in the question. And please do ask questions at any time during the program. We will process all the questions and put to Charu in the second half of the program. So that's all I had for this particular piece. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and invite Charu to the program. Charu, thank you for joining. I know it's very early morning for you in Seattle. Thank you so much for joining. We have quite a lot of people looking forward to your presentation today. The format of the program, Charu, is that the introduction is over. I will hand it over to you to take us for the next 15-20 minutes with your presentation and or your storytelling on what your life has been since you left CEG, focusing significantly on the highlights of your career, learnings, and things that you want to pass on to the next generation, etc. All that. At the end of the 15-20 minutes, I'll interrupt you, and then we'll go on to questions from me, and then the questions from the audience. Okay. With that, I will turn it over to you. And again, please stay on mute, the rest of the team. And Charu, it's over to you.
Thank you, Vish, for the wonderful introduction, and just a huge shout out to you and the group that puts this program together. I heard about it from my friend Priya Iyer, CEO, and so she was part of the series, and she introduced me to you. And here we are having a conversation on a Sunday morning for me. Really, really appreciate the fact that you're making such a strong effort to get the alumni community connected. Everything I am today, I think the beginnings were in CEG. And I have a deep sense of gratitude towards that institution that supported so many of us and allowed, give us that foundational, I'd say, uh, learnings that helped us get to where we're at. And so my goal today is to make a connection with the alumni community, share what I've learned. I have now have had a 3-decade career. In fact, all at Microsoft. I'm in the beginning of my 4th decade in the company, and so what I've done is I've put together my learnings into like a somewhat hopefully succinct slideshow kind of presentation. So I'll get through that. I'm perfectly comfortable taking questions midstream if that'll help, or this should take no more than 15 minutes, what I have, and then we will go interactive.
Thank you.
So with that, I wanted to just walk through my early years in the tech industry. Began when I joined Microsoft as an intern in 1991. This was the beginning of my internship. So when I graduated from College of Engineering, Guindy, I graduated in 1990, and I moved to California, Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara, to do my PhD, interestingly, in theoretical computer science. So I had been inducted into the PhD program, and it sounded like exactly the thing I wanted to do. And when I joined UC Santa Barbara, I was there for like 3 quarters, and then summer of 91, Microsoft called me for a internship. And I remember coming up to Seattle, being fascinated with this company that had just was in the cusp of this PC, I would say the PC server era kind of disruption. And as I look back, the learnings from Gindi, the learnings from masters, I kind of put them to use. Did my internship program. I would say a lot of learnings from that internship program. But the biggest learning for me was that I really wanted to be part of the tech industry. I did not at that point think that a PhD program was necessarily my cup of tea. I felt there's a much stronger fit building distributed systems in the real world. So what I did is I proceeded to kind of graduate with a master's in computer science with a distributed systems, I would say, concentration. And it was relatively easy. You just dropped out of the PhD program. You told your department that you were going to graduate with a master's instead of a PhD. And then in 1992, I joined Microsoft as a software engineer and test. So these foundational skills for my career were that first decade, beginning 1992, where I kind of, I would say, acquired the set of skills that I thought were helped me kind of kept me in good stead for the rest of the decades that I did spend eventually at Microsoft. The second big era for me was when the web internet era. This was us beginning to understand the significance of building web services, building obviously there's a very famous internet memo people may have heard of, where Microsoft had literally initially missed the bus on the internet, and then but then we eventually did catch up. But the biggest learnings I got out of that second era in the company were around technical depth and innovation. The third decade, which is probably the last 10 to 11 years, has been very strongly focused on the cloud mobile era, with organizational leadership and business innovation at the core of it. And I'd say that I grew from being an individual contributor to leading teams. And I did, in many ways, try out being an individual contributor, but at some point gravitated towards a people manager kind of role, and an organizational leader, because at the end of the day, a large company like Microsoft is really driven by large organizations. And for me, learning what it meant to be an organizational leader of a large team of engineers was at the core of what I learned in the cloud mobile era. And of course, as we look at the world we're in today of ubiquitous computing and ambient intelligence, I do think it really sets a stage. It's a momentous platform shift for all of us, momentous platform shift. I think all of us who are probably in the tech industry at this point will acknowledge that the generative AI wave is going to fundamentally transform the way we do potentially everything. And for me, it's super exciting to now begin my fourth decade in this new paradigm shift. And what I'll spend a few minutes talking through, Vish and others, is how I adapted myself to, in many ways, I'd say, pick up those technology shifts, and more importantly, how do you respond to those technology shifts? So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So on the personal side, just to give you folks a little background about myself, I'm now been married for the last 3 decades. Incidentally, we have, my husband and I, we have 2 children. My elder daughter is getting married this summer. She's 25, and my son, he's 21, in college doing his third year undergrad in computer science. In fact, interestingly, the city of Seattle at the University of Washington. So for me, the early years and mid-career years were really trying to kind of think through this concept of life without lines. I think many of us have heard of the mythical work-life balance, and that's exactly what I think it is. I think it's mythical to claim that we can balance work and life perfectly. And so I learned over the years to like live life without lines and really interleave work and life in a very natural way so that you could take care of your needs, your personal needs. Perhaps there are people in the audience who may have needs to kind of to give elder care, right? Like you may have parents who may need to be taken to the eye hospital, or you may need to attend your child's parent-teacher meeting. And then, or you may have something where you have to attend something for a friend or take care of a friend. So how did you balance all these kind of multiple factors at the same time balancing a tech career? I think I learned the value of well-being, and the focus on kind of well-being and living life without lines at some level. Through the years, I had to commit to reinvent. I could not bring the same, I'd say, the same approach to my career that I did, say, in the early 90s and expect to kind of grow or expect to see success. And I had to constantly reinvent myself in order to kind of keep up. And sometimes, more importantly, look within at the things that perhaps I had not approached the right way. In my mind, I think I had at times picked up some negative energy, and I had to constantly commit to reinvent myself so that I could look ahead and build on my success as opposed to looking at something as a setback. So this was a pretty big piece, and I'm hoping I will talk about that in more detail. I learned to innovate for the long term. I think being in the tech industry is really about not what you can get done in the next 3 months, but what you're doing, how can it potentially transform how people interact with, I guess, the world. And so committing to kind of innovate for the long term. And over the years, especially as I took on larger and larger roles in the company and took on very strong leadership roles, I had to learn to stretch my leadership potential. And then this last one, which I really think is super exciting, which says, okay, how do you dance on the edge of authority into leadership? And I'll talk about that in more detail. But these were, I would almost say, on the personal front, on my personal learnings front, these were some of the big, I would call them highlights. As we look at my career journey, and I'll explain for people who are wondering what that backdrop is, I have a story to tell, but just be patient. I'll get to that in a few minutes. So for me, I kind of classify my career journey into like 3 big buckets: innovation, thought leadership, pride of craftsmanship, and manufacturing success. On the first one, it was really this ability to react and respond, both even recognize technology shifts. In the just to give you an example, we were building this database product. In fact, I think this is when I worked with some of the other alumni, Murali Krishna Vish. I think, in case you're curious, we worked in the SQL Server team together. And at that point, SQL Server was this big, I'd say, mission critical database that was running production workloads. And what we did was the team had built something called SQL Server Compact Edition. This is a mobile database engine. One of the pieces of technology that I was working on was called merge replication, that allowed you to essentially synchronize data between mobile databases and big production databases. So noticing this trend that our companies were beginning to mobilize their line of business applications, I proposed, in fact, that we could synchronize mobile databases with backend databases. Now, as many of you think about it, that sounds pretty natural, but in the mid 90s, this was ahead of the curve. There's a technology shift that was upon us because mobile data connections were getting a lot more, I'd say, prominent. Line of business applications were getting more prominent. Uh, to give you an example, the Nabisco, which is like the biscuit company, they used to have a truck delivery application that the truck drivers took this ruggedized handheld device running a SQL Server Compact Edition database, and we would be able to download the truck routes. The truck driver would be able to travel through the day through the city delivering their crates of biscuits, and then be able to update the information offline and come back and synchronize the information at the end of their delivery route that evening. This is an example of a line of business application that had become was running on a mobile form factor. So I think being able to speculate where the puck may land, and putting up your hand and saying, you know what, I can go build this synchronization between a compact edition database and a SQL Server database, was an example of a willingness to take a risk. And in that journey, I saw many setbacks. I saw that our ability to build that in a way that was performant and reliable was not trivial. So as long as you're willing to kind of demonstrate that passion to solve, you may need potentially sometimes multiple versions to get it right, and also be able to influence others. You also needed other people to take the bet along with you. So I really kind of think that this is at the core of that innovation and thought leadership aspect of my kind of career, which is uh, technology shifts are very natural. They so happen. I've seen them roughly every 8 to 10 years. You see like a big shift, and you really need to kind of align your career to somewhat respond to those paradigm shifts. And in many ways, you really need to be willing to take those risks and propose directions that can respond and kind of recognize and really like leverage these technology shifts.
Charu, just keep a tab on time. So we have a few more minutes for you to finish your presentation, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Like maybe 5 to 7 more minutes.
10 more minutes. 10 more minutes you can have. 10 more minutes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. I'll get through these very quickly. The second big set of ideas were really on this uh, focusing on the business need. You really want to solve the right problem. Sometimes, often we look at solving problems, but we're not often working on the most important or the problem that the business needs you to solve. And it's also crucial for you to solve them at the right complexity and scope. Like you can't go build a Mickey Mouse capability when you need something industrial strength. So solving problems at the right complexity and scope, and finally delivering the results, the the brand that you have is a track record of what you've done for the company. And so you do this. In my case, I decided to do it using domain expertise, which means I would build my expertise over years in the same tech area. Many of us are familiar with many different ways of growing, and I want to kind of acknowledge that all ways are equally valid. In my particular case, I chose to build it with domain expertise. At the end of a decade in databases, I was an expert in database replication, as an example. Or in the cloud computing world, I've now become an expert in the BCDR area just because I've persistently built that domain expertise in not over 1 year or 2 years, in my case, over an entire decade. And at the end of the day, the key learning I have is you have to have like this razor sharp focus on execution. And when I say execution, you really need to deliver that product to customers and make sure your customers are succeeding. Otherwise, what you built is almost like theoretical, and it doesn't really work in the field. So that focus on execution, and some of my learnings there were when we had built a DR product. This DR product was expected to work when the cloud was down. In fact, when one of the cloud regions were down, customers expected to run the disaster DR infrastructure in a different region of the cloud. This example of us building this capability, this was a product called Microsoft Azure Site Recovery, where the expectation was that customers would use this insurance when they actually had an outage. In some of my learnings were when the product was expected to be used, it did not work for some of our customers. And while it was extremely embarrassing, we looked at that as an opportunity to kind of learn from our failures and go back and fix the product. And many of you may be pleased to know that one of the products that I worked on in my career, Microsoft Azure Site Recovery, has been named by the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Disaster Recovery as a Service as a leader, visionary and a leader multiple years in a row. So how do you get from an idea, right, which is, okay, this is an idea that I proposed. If you remember in the previous slide, I talked about this responding to an innovation. In this particular innovation that I had picked up was that the cloud was going to really be foundational for DR, as in customers would be comfortable running their DR infrastructure in the cloud. And how do you go from that idea to delivering a product? But how do you get to this world-class being a leader in a magic quadrant? I think there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and there's a strong, strong focus on execution. So just want to make sure that there are no shortcuts on that one. And ultimately, this last one around manufacturing your own success, obsessing about your customer, the building the product with the highest kind of quality. There is no shortcuts on this one. And finally, focusing on both the market adoption and customer success. You only exist in the company. Your role in the company is conditional on the customer succeeding with your product. And how do you kind of adopt that customer obsession mindset and in many ways kind of manufacture your success. So that kind of summarizes like my, I'd say, learnings from some of my career experiences. I wanted to also share this very important concept of adaptive and ambidextrous leadership, especially in the world we're in today where we need to innovate for the future. There's a very strong need to protect and grow the core business, right? Like you really need to balance the shoulds on the left and the coulds on the right. And you have to manage this paradox. You need to, as a leader, learn to forward invest innovation for growth. But at the same time, the only reason you have permission to do that is because you're able to protect and grow your core business. So this is another kind of, I would say, aspect of my leadership that got stronger over the years. So as I look at this for many of you who are wondering what was that backdrop in the slide, I want to give you this, share this story with you.
Is that your house? Is that your house, Charu?
I don't think so. This is a beautiful monastery in Bhutan. It's called the Tiger's Nest Monastery. For people who consider traveling to Bhutan, please do not miss going to this place called Paro. This monastery is situated in the Paro Valley. This is a monastery that is absolutely like I'd say, sacred for Bhutanese people. It's called also called Takshang. Takshang is the name of this monastery, and situated on a sheer cliff, extremely high up, like nearly situated around 10,000 feet from this sea level. And the climb to this is around a 3,000 feet vertical climb virtually. And as I attempted climbing this, and just to give you some context, I'm not one of those physically active kind of people. I go for a walk in the park. That's kind of physical activity I'm used to. So when I looked at this Takshang monastery, I was like, there's no way I can do it. I was somewhat discouraged, even just seeing the monastery high up in the sky. But then along with my fellow trekkers, I decided to make the climb. And then we had a guide who, for the first half of the journey, put me on a horse. We would nudge this horse and they would kind of come up to like the halfway mark. And at that point, the guide told me, you're on your own. There's no further support. You're going to have to do this yourself. And at that moment, I had to decide if I was going to climb the rest of it on my own 2 feet, or perhaps just take a break and, just wait for my fellow trekkers to come back from that climb. So much to my, I think, I would say, this is one of those, I'd like say, an inflection moment in my own thinking about self-belief. I decided to, take the plunge. And believe me when I say it, this was one of the toughest things for me at that point in terms of my own physical prowess. But just setting my mind to kind of get to the top of this monastery was absolutely, like, I'd say, a leap of faith. I did that, and the getting into the monastery building was such a serene, beautiful environment, was the reward in itself. The reason I bring this up is I've used this, I'd almost say like as a framework to think about my career, right? A career journey can often have those rough spots. You may need to take rest, you may need to take help from people. But at the end of the day, your career journey is a function of your own self belief. And with that, since we're running out of time, I'm going to just quickly walk you through around 7 or 8 kind of big learnings that I think I captured over the last 3+ decades. That is, it's really a function of our choices. Our career journey is a function of our choices and our constraints. And I think it's really important to own our choices and own our power to change our choices as well. So I've noticed that every time you come from a disempowered space in your career, you're not going to make progress. If you're going to sit there and say that somebody did this to me, that next promotion did not happen because the system is trying to mess with me, it's not going to be the right approach. You're really going to have to somewhat commit to rethinking, like, how are you showing up? What is the level of self belief you're bringing to the table? And I think this is a very, very big learning. All of us, I think, will acknowledge that there is an inner critic we all experience. These are voices within our own head that tell us we can do this and we can't do this. So I think really important to silence that critic, accept those fears. And first is to acknowledge that those fears are real and they happen to all of us, and be willing to take those risks, and those setbacks, I think, are just naturally going to be part of the journey. The key I learned was that people are always willing to help. It does take a village. And in fact, this group, the alumni group that Vish and others have formed, is a good example of this allyship, right? And both the need to ask help and accept help. The success, I think we talked about the single minded focus that you need to kind of drive through. The journey, do not forget to savor the journey, because the journey is as important as the summit. I think if you forget to experience the journey, forget to make friendships along the way, forget to give somebody a helping hand, that's not going to really be the right experience of a career journey. So I would say savoring the journey is as important. Pay it forward. Be curious as who's at the table and who's not at the table. I think we all have immense privilege with the experiences we have in our own careers. So don't for a minute sit there thinking that you arrived at that single-handedly. You arrived at it because there were people ahead of you who, we sometimes stand on the shoulders of giants, people who were ahead of us, who broke ground, who broke ceilings, and allowed us to kind of understand how, not just who was at the table, but more importantly, who was not, and create a level playing field for the people that were not at the table. And this is the last kind of piece of advice I have for the group out here, which is leadership often starts where authority ends, right? I love this analogy saying leadership is really about being the sand around an oyster shell so a pearl may emerge. So you really need to be that irritant around an oyster shell so that a beautiful pearl may emerge. And sometimes leadership journey may feel that way. It's tough, but I think it really is about that. And with that, I want to just motivate that we are at the cusp of the biggest change, the most momentous platform shift that at least I will probably see in my own lifetime. You see the nearly 20x kind of GDP growth multiplier that we're seeing with the tech, and we expect AI to be that next massive pace of change. And so I'm going to close off right now and open up for questions. But I think I wanted to leave you with this thought process that leadership is really about how do you dance on the edge. It's not about being in the hierarchy. Leadership, in fact, can come from anywhere in the hierarchy. You can be an entry level engineer or a program manager or a data scientist in an organization and come back with a set of ideas. And so leadership has nothing to do with your position in the hierarchy. And so how do you dance on the edge of authority into leadership? And so I'm going to leave you folks with this almost like call to action, saying go back and experience or figure out what your own leadership expression is. Because I personally felt like the minute I started showing up as a leader, my own career journey at Microsoft was definitely saw the benefits of that. With that, thank you. And thank you for this amazing opportunity to hang out with all of you, and happy to take questions. I'm a very transparent speaker. So just wanted to let you know that all questions are good with me. I'm happy to take the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, I'm happy to talk about anything under the sun. So, thank you.
Thank you, Charu. Thank you. It's an amazing speech. Excellent. I think you covered everything that we wanted to hear in a
Yeah,
very
great.
crisp and in a concise form. So, Matt, you have something to say?
I just wanted everybody to applaud and unmute. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
So,
Excellent.
what I want to do now is request all the audience to open up the video. We want Charu, if we can just stop the presentation, then we will ask everyone to open the video so we can take a screenshot, please. I'll give you a couple of minutes while we continue the conversation. So, Charu, amazing talk. I had to say that one of the best we have heard. Very organized, very clear, and very concise. A few takeaways I saw here that adaptive and ambidextrous leadership. I heard some few new good words here, and manufacturing success. Amazing. I think it's very true that we can't rely on others to create success for us. We have to create it for ourselves. And in terms of personal lives, I think I'm happy to say that our personal lives are also family lives are very similar. I have two children, and my second one is getting married in December this year. The older one is already married, lives in Austin, Texas, two girls. Uh,
Wonderful.
my second one is actually a product manager at Google Search, so I'll ask her to connect with you because I think there are a lot of things that she could learn from you as well.
And yeah, if you notice, we're also doing some deep innovation in search. So perhaps a career
No,
change.
I know, but I know that if I ask her to talk to you, then Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella may not like it, but that's okay. But that's okay. They can talk offline. Okay. So with that, I want to ask a few questions. Charu, being from Microsoft, there are a few questions that have to be asked. Chat GPT. Uh, the Chat GPT, the one word that has taken the world by storm recently, with the AI, LLM, Chat GPT, what have you, being just want to get a few perspective sound bites from you as an insider on what is this thing and what should we expect from this thing.
Yeah, I think so much has been said about it, so I will not claim to be the expert on LLMs. But as an engineer who's helping build the infrastructure that powers these large language models, all I can say is we're not able to build it fast enough. Frankly, it's just at this point, just onboarding those GPUs so we can run those amazing algorithms, I think is massive. The one thing I will say is I think it's really crucial for the world to somewhat be thoughtful about how we innovate on LLMs or innovate on AI. I really, really strongly believe that these have the power to transform lives, but I also worry about the biases in these models. I worry about are they trustworthy? Are they inclusive? Right? Like so, Microsoft. To give you an example, Microsoft has a set of responsible AI principles because we really believe that it's important for like a data set for, let's just say, diabetic retinopathy. If that data set does not include people who are not digitally connected, I worry about the level of bias that model may have because you're now making decisions, but then there's potentially a part of the world that's not represented in that data set. So I really would say we think large language models are transformational. We think we're pivoting the company on it. All of you may know that that's the new direction we are headed. That having been said, we also want to take a responsible position and kind of lead the tech industry with a thoughtful approach on this because I really worry about getting it wrong. There are going to be serious consequences to humanity if we get it wrong. That having been said, we're excited. Like I said, people on my teams, we're building the OpenAI supercomputer, we call it that. We can't build it fast enough. We literally, at this point, are capacity constrained. There's just so much demand for this. That having been said, what surprises me, or perhaps surprised most of the world, is our our CEO's ability to see this ahead of the curve, right? Like clearly, Sam Altman and these folks are amazing innovation. I'd say they live and breathe innovation. But the partnership with OpenAI has been pretty fantastic, and we're hoping that we do it in a way that is very aligned with our mission, right? We really want people and organizations on the world to achieve more. But we've heard the debate on LLMs saying, "Oh, should we now worry about human jobs going away?" I think jobs are going to get transformed. There's no doubt, right? But the way we want to think about it is, can humans become more productive? Can the way they do their jobs? We think AI amplifies human ingenuity. It does not replace humans. So that's the position we've taken on this one, and you will see that in all the stuff that we're bringing to market. I think I haven't seen a consumer product with this level of success. In less than 3 months, we crossed 100 million users. Never in
Super.
the history of mankind has a consumer product had this kind of a climb. And I think Microsoft took everyone by surprise being part of this. Of course, OpenAI gets the amazing amount of credit for what the key innovations that they've driven around this. So I'd say watch out for the space in terms of innovations, but also start paying attention to how the industry is going to evolve to this. It's like the equivalent of, I kind of call it like an arms race, but it's really important for people to slow down and understand, okay, how are they bringing these innovations to market? Are they doing it with safety? Are they doing it sustainably? Are they doing it with inclusion at the core of it?
Super. I have to say that as a shareholder of Microsoft, I'm very happy. I started investing in Microsoft from 1992,
Oh,
and I
you
know
must have
that.
done really good.
Yeah, very well, I had to say. However, in between, for some time, it was not clear where Microsoft was going. So people were, pulling money out. I chose not to pull out. So I'm very happy with that. But to be fair, I also invest in other tech companies too, particularly Google. My daughter works there. She needs a job. So I invest there as well. But I have to say that I did try Bing with the new Chat GPT interface. It is awesome. I have to say it is very good. Breaking into the search business, I think it's amazing. Google had a complete stronghold on that. They still do to a certain extent, but getting into that business and challenging them, I think, is a very gutsy move. So later on in
And
the
I think
meeting,
that, yeah, Vish, I think that challenger mindset, there's a philosophy we practice at Microsoft. It's called the growth mindset, right?
yeah,
You you cannot put your self-worth on the line. And yes, for years, it looked like we didn't have a shot at search,
hmm,
but never say never. So,
yeah, I think it's amazing, amazing development. So I'll come back to a few questions later on. I want to have the audience questions. Quite a lot of questions are queued up. So I'm going to start with the question from Anonymous. What is the current database used by Microsoft customer for large volume applications? Whoever asked the question, can you please identify yourself?
Yeah. I'm Ramakrishnan, 1974 batch. See, I have luckily I have worked on IMS, DB2, and IDMS, all three types of database. Generally, my strength is always on the back end, how to store the large volumes of data. I just want to know earlier I have worked with SQL Server 7, then MS Access came. Just I wanted to know from you how the large customers of Microsoft are managing their data. And I heard somewhere Cloud SQL, something like that, download it for free, something like that. So I want to know how they are storing that data.
so great question. And you're one of my seniors, so huge thank
Thank
you
you.
for paving the path for us. So in terms of our data strategy, right, like I think SQL Server is clearly one of the big, I'd say, legs of our SQL strategy. I see Kumar, you were in the SQL team, weren't you, at Microsoft? My alumni, I see you on the call. So anyway, SQL definitely is a core aspect of our data strategy. That having been said, we completely believe that the world is shifting. We have analytics databases, we have HD Insights. So we have a brand new strategy around data. It's called the Fabric. So when you have a chance, just go look up Microsoft Fabric. We just announced it at Build. And Fabric
Okay.
is like this all-encompassing data strategy where it's
Okay.
called the One Lake, right? Where you can have data stored in SQL, you can have data stored in HD Insights, you can have data stored in Postgre. So we have completely opened up, and we do not sit there believing that you need to store data in a Microsoft proprietary format. We embrace
Okay.
all open data sets, and so the
Okay.
Microsoft Fabric strategy is something I would point you to. So thank
Very
you.
good.
Super.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next question, Charu, is from Anonymous again. I don't know why everybody wants to be anonymous today, but anyway, what is your experience growing and succeeding as a women leader in this world where gender parity is still work in progress? What advice do you have?
Great question. And a lot of the learnings that I had, while they're fairly neutral, as in they're not specific to gender, I think a lot of my learnings did come from working through this playing field that at times did not feel level, right? I had to find my inner voice. I had to find my inner voice and externalize and make it my outer voice. So the thing that I want to call out, right? Gender diversity is work in progress, but so is parity for people LGBTQI plus or people with disabilities. There are always going to be underrepresented minorities in any industry. That's just a fact of life. So the key thing that I would call out, right, is the model that I have used to in many ways both support myself and support people around me has been this model of allyship, right? Like where allyship is it's not friendship, it's not mentorship, it's not sponsorship. It's allyship is very clearly practice of awareness, curiosity, and courage, right? Where you are willing to build awareness into a different person's experience. You're willing to be curious about, like I said, who's at the table and who's not, and then you're willing to speak up on their behalf. So the things that I've done are like really, how do you amplify somebody's voice? Somebody's in a meeting and they're constantly getting interrupted. Perhaps that somebody is a woman who is meek. Perhaps it's a male who does not is maybe more introverted. It doesn't matter. So how do you level the playing field and amplify that person's signal, right? The second piece is how do you interrogate your own privilege and figure out, okay, who's at the table and who's not. To give you an example, when I joined Microsoft IDC, India Development Center in Hyderabad, probably 1 in 5 or even less than that, like maybe one in 10 of the highest campus hires were women. And we've done phenomenal amount of work to go get strong campus talent, and now maybe 4 in 10 or 4 in 10 or at least definitely 3.5 in 10 are women hires. Just as an example where you're willing to go back and look at, okay, what in the system is not working, like perhaps the way we interview. And so just interrogating your own privilege and then and figuring out how do you level that playing field. And then finally, of course, using your voice to amplify somebody else's signal and really kind of standing up on their behalf, right? Speaking on their behalf. I think that allyship model is powerful. I personally have benefited hugely from having allies at Microsoft, people who, if you remember, I gave you that example of that Tiger's Nest Monastery climb. Halfway through my Microsoft journey, I somewhat lost belief in my abilities. I had mentors around me who believed that I had it in me to kind of keep going. And perhaps that's all you need. You need that extra nudge. You need that extra helping hand. Somebody who's willing to believe in you. And a mentor sometimes is a person who believes in you ahead of you believing in yourself.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Not just for yourself, but for people around you. I think it's really important.
So regarding this gender diversity, I want to make sure all of you understand that CEG as institution is world #1 in diversity. I don't know how many of you know, out of the 1,200 students that CEG admits every year in the first year of BE, over 50% are women. In some courses like computer science, electrical, and EEE, we have more women than men. I don't know if any college, any university in the world can claim this diversity, right? So we should definitely be very proud of what our college has done in terms of gender diversity. And
That's
this
fantastic,
is
Fish.
not
I
only,
did not know it was more than that. Is fantastic.
yeah, not only students, even in faculty. If you look at every aspect of that, we have more women. We also had the first women dean in Dr. Geeta about a few years ago. A lot of things that we can feel very proud of. You know, all of us have a lot of things to gripe about CEG for various reasons, but there are also some great things happening. The second thing I would say is that we also have amongst the students in CEG a group called Akriti. It's a women-only club started by girls of CEG for CEG. and these people will conduct programs. So I think, Charu, I would highly recommend that I'll connect you to them, because these girls want to hear inspiring stories from other CEG women alumni. So I would definitely
Wonderful.
request you to recommend you to go and talk to them, because these people are doing an awesome job, and I try my best to connect them to the right alumni, women alumni in the CEG. So that's another thing we should be proud of. Our students are able to run this program for women by women. And the third thing I would say in gender diversity, in Anna University we have something called EFG, Entrepreneurship for Girls. This is actual formal center established under the Anna University umbrella, where they're specifically supporting entrepreneurship for women, and they have programs around it, etc. All that. So I think all of us should be aware of the fact that these things are happening in the university. Unfortunately, they don't get very published, or people don't hear about them. I get to hear because I speak to the people very regularly. I go to the campus almost every other week. But these are things that are going on the gender diversity standpoint. So just wanted to pass that information on. Anyway, okay. The next question, I'm going to go to the line, Charu. Let's see. Charu, you mentioned the fine line between work and life balance. Can you expand on it? Anonymous. Who asked the question? Can you please identify yourself?
Hey, hi everyone. This is Rajesh. Sorry, I don't know why it keeps coming up as anonymous. I tried to put my own name.
Okay.
And I just want to say a few words before I ask my question. Charu, fantastic presentation, and great to see your career on this superb trajectory. I don't know if you remember me, but I was your junior 1991 batch ECE. We worked together on the IEEE student chapter.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Rajesh.
Yeah. So, yeah, fantastic presentation, as Vish said, one of the best we've heard. So, again, being at a executive level and balancing work life, you have your daughter and daughter getting married and all that. So, I think it's always a challenge, balancing everything. And you mentioned something really unique there, that there's really no separation. It's almost like you have to blend with everything. Right? So, would like to hear your thoughts on more on that.
Yeah, thanks, Rajesh. And first of all, I think we did some fun work in the IEEE student chapter. So kudos to you, and I hope the IEEE chapter is running well at CEG. So from my perspective, I think what I learned early years is that work-life balance means you achieve this perfect, like everything's there. And instead of shooting for that, I said I'm going to choose for work-life harmony. How do you harmonize your work and life choices? Which means that if you have to take time to take your mother-in-law to the cancer hospital because she needs to be there, then you take the few days off from work and you go to Chennai and take care of what you need. If you don't, then there's a very big part of your life that you've given up on. And I want to just share something I heard from one of my colleagues who recently retired from Microsoft. This gentleman is 60 something, very successful. He has two children. They both married. They both, in fact, work at Microsoft. They live in Hyderabad, take care of their two mothers, both his wife's mother and his mother. I really look up to him. He's like, I consider him a mentor for me. And he said something to all the Microsofties in the audience. He said, 20 years after you're retired from the company, 20, 30 years after that, nobody's going to remember that you worked at Microsoft. The only people who will remember that you worked at Microsoft are your family. And they'll remember it for all the wrong reasons. So I thought that was fantastic advice for all of us, right? Is that at times, like, kind of making this unidimensional, okay, it's all about career, or it's all about, I think you may do yourself injustice. And the good news with tech, and now with, I guess, most industries, is like there is work from home. There is so many choices we now have. I mean, COVID, the silver lining in that cloud was that it allowed us so much more flexibility than we thought we had. So over the years, Rajesh, I chose to I wanted to I live my life with this principle, right? Very simple principle: regret minimization techniques. Like, do not regret any choice you make, because you don't want to kind of get to your deathbed and like, oh, I wish I had done that. Like, no, that's not. I don't live life like that. So so the 2 years after each of my when 1998, when my daughter was born, and 2003 when my son was born, I did part-time at Microsoft. I would work like a 50 or 75% of what time I needed to be there, which meant that I would show up at work. I'd be very, very focused. It'd be a 5-hour working day. I'd come back home, and then my mother-in-law and I would take my daughter on a pram and go to the local park, right? And in hindsight, those are choices that I'm so thrilled I made. Possibly my career trajectory would have been faster if I had not done that. But when I look back, that's just, I have zero regrets about my early motherhood years. I feel like I was able to balance this. I had, and the good news in my case, Rajesh, was I had tremendous support. Tremendous support. I think that support system, I think, is again crucial to harmonizing your work and life choices.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank you.
Charu.
Ram Pradeep,
Thank you.
you're up next. Can you ask your question? Ram Pradeep.
Yeah, this is Ram Pradeep here. So I work at Google, by the way. And interestingly, 1989 passed out Mr. Ravichandra was my company Apigee or Sarva Systems co-founder. So yeah, we are interesting connections. So I was just thinking, very curious about especially the cyber security, right? With a lot of data, everything. I mean, simple things starting from the installing apps, right? People just install apps, and then you have a lot of things going on. Just curious to know how things are your views around that.
Yeah, it's
Just
a
thought
great question.
a different topic, and
Yes.
something which I read every day, so just want to be curious and want to put the disclaimer that I'm from Google. So
Oh, I love it. I think just so you know, we collaborate with Google on so many fronts. In fact, we work with Google engineers on something called clean rooms. In India, I don't know if folks in the call have heard of this digital public goods, where you have like the cashless, the presenceless kind of layers. One of the layers that the India stack or the digital public goods folks are motivating is the data layer, and it's called DEPA, Data Enforcement Protection Architecture. And incidentally, on DEPA, we collaborate with Google because we think we all truly believe data is the new currency. Data is the new gold rush. We all know it. We've known it for years, and LLMs have just taken it to that next level. So personally, I'll now take a position that's possibly more a Microsoft friendly kind of position. I think consumers have to own their data, right? It really is crucial that we take consumers' consent as we use that data. So the way I look at data is beyond security, it's also data privacy. I think it's important. And so there's some very interesting evolution of this data privacy that's happening both in regulation but also in technology and infrastructure, right? So in fact, Google, a bunch of us are working on very similar I'd say innovations. So I think watch the space, Ram Pradeep. I think it's a very, very hot area, but more importantly, we really need to think about how to give back control. I think it's terrifying how much of our data is out there for consumption, right? And what can we do to give back control to the users so they don't? I think there's a lot of not state actors. There's a lot of malicious actors out there that are benefiting from this. In fact, I remember one of my friend's sons had come over for lunch, and while we were at the lunch, this kid there was some kind of a ransomware attack. That person had posted some very unsavory pictures about this child on the web and said, if you send me, this was in like Bitcoin currency, unless you send me XYZ amount of Bitcoin currency, I won't delete those photos. And I saw a live ransomware attack happening like at the lunch. It's sad, right? Like, and you saw the level of stress this kid was going through because it was their reputation at stake. So I think there's so much to be lost if we get this wrong. And I think tech has not yet gotten it right. I don't think there's enough safety in data, the way we handle data, right? And so I think the government is taking, different governments across the world. I hear that nearly 65% or 75% of the world's data is going to come under privacy regulation. So I think it's going to be a combination of privacy regulation. It's going to be a combination of cloud providers like Amazon, Google, Microsoft being somewhat very thoughtful about this and giving kind of that control and privacy back to the users. So I hope I answered your question more specifically. And yes, we do love collaborating with Google. So
Yeah,
Thanks. So Charu, bunch more questions in the line. I know we are at 9 p.m. now. Are you okay if you take a few more questions? Maybe it'll be like a more like a speed round or something like that. I'll read the question. You can just kind of pop the answers that comes to your mind. How was that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I am
Okay.
happy to. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So let's.
yes, a couple of things I do. I am open to mentoring startups. I see some of those
Good.
questions. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
So took that. You can take that off your list. So please
Okay.
reach out to me. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
You may want to say how to reach out to you. Is it LinkedIn the only choice? Do you
LinkedIn.
want to put any
Link.
other contact information?
No, yeah, I prefer LinkedIn. So I'll post my handle. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to just read the other first question, the line very quick. From Navneet, watching from afar at Microsoft, what advice can you share on to someone hoping to emulate the trajectory you have had in the last decade?
Be fearless. I think put yourself out there. And I talked about this leadership, dancing on the edge of authority into leadership, right? So do not for a minute think that you need to be given power or given a particular anointed role to create impact. So focus on impact, but do it in a way where you question assumptions you may have made about, is this my remit or not? Question those assumptions. I'm not saying go step on toes. That's always ugly when people do that. But do it in a way where you are collaborative, you take people along and reach out and seek help. That would be one advice I have.
Super. So next question comes from Balaji Anbaragan. Hey Charu, the security issues that you have mentioned in GPT LLMs, that's due to the fact that they do not hold accountability, right? Can RLNN help here? I don't know what that means. Can RLNN help here? Do you understand?
Yeah, I think they're referring to some techniques. And then for nearest neighbor, can somebody
Well,
Reinforcement learning neural networks.
Green. Neural networks. Okay, sorry, I wasn't familiar with that particular acronym. I think there are a lot of techniques to build in accountability. I don't. I'm not an expert. I can't answer that specific question, Balaji, if that's okay. But I do know that we are working on many techniques. In fact, some of them in Microsoft Research that can help ground these LLMs and improve that truth, right? So I think there's a lot of fascinating research. I'm going to beg some ignorance. I'm not the expert here, so I'm going to pass on that. So.
okay, super. The next question, Charu, is from anonymous person. Hi, Charu. How do you think about IC leadership versus managerial role? What were learnings that you would like to share with us? I think you talked about that in the presentation, right?
Yeah.
So
So
you
I
can
think
summarize that.
at the end of the day, an IC leader is also or a manager. They're all leaders at the end of the day, right? Whether you're an individual contributor, whether you're a manager. But in my own case, I ended up switching from an IC to a manager back to an IC, and I did this a couple of times, and I'm still hoping to go back to an IC role at some point in my career. I think it's about manager is you creating impact through people, right? Like you're manager of managers, you're creating impact through your managers. Whereas in IC, you are individually accountable. But for both roles, you have to be a leader, right? Sometimes people get confused saying, "Oh, if you're a IC, you don't have to be a leader. That manager person will take care of leadership." Answer is no. So, but I think being able to abstract an IC leader needs to kind of be much better at abstracting thought processes, being able to layer architecture. And I learned this because of my IC and manager kind of experiences. I was able to bring the strengths of IC leadership into my manager role as well, right? Like for a couple of years, I was the principal architect of multiple products. Being an architect means you're an IC, but you're influencing the direction or the roadmap of the product, but you have to do it in a way where you take a lot of people along. You do it with your technical direction setting. So we can talk more, but in brief, I want to say, I think you have to think about each role carefully, and how do you adapt yourself to be good at that role. And in hindsight, I always think my IC leadership deeply influenced my managerial leadership as well. So.
Hey Charu, I'd like to take a minute. Hey, this is Kumar. You mentored me for like 7-8 years long back. So it was nice. It's nice meeting you here. I asked this question, and yeah, I would love to connect more on this. I'm at a stage where like I'm a principal IC, still thinking about what my next steps in career is. I would love to connect with you,
That's
and it's nice meeting with you. And I'm really happy that you mentioned a lot of things like mentoring people when they are lost, and you actually did that to me when I was lost in my career, like when I started my career. Thanks a lot for doing that, and it's nice catching up with you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to see you, Kumar. I'm in the Seattle area, so perhaps we can meet up for coffee.
Yeah,
Talking
sure.
talking about mentoring, guys, I think as you know that we are CEG and Anna University is doing a lot of activities in the startup and the entrepreneur ecosystem. They look out for mentors, alumni mentors. I think they know that we have a very, very strong network of alumni all over the world in very good positions. So I would encourage you guys to volunteer time to mentor. There are a lot of wonderful startups in the CEG ecosystem from students as well as from research scholars, and we have a couple of incubators in the campus as well. If any of you are interested in being a mentor, which I recommend you strongly become a mentor, please reach out to me. I'll connect you to the respective CEOs of the incubation centers. They'll be very happy to entertain you and take you on as a mentor. So please consider that as a giving back to the alma mater that you got so much benefit from. Okay. So next question, Charu, is again anonymous. Hi, Charu. In your experience, how did the transformation of MS happen under Nadella? Few highlights.
What a question. I think as an insider, I can tell you that Satya Nadella joining as CEO of Microsoft in 2014 was like a transformational moment, not just for the company, but actually for the tech industry. And by 2014, I want to say like we had a few dark years. We had many dark years, in fact, where it wasn't clear we were headed in the right direction. People were trying to pull out money from the stocks, which thankfully was smart enough to keep his money in there. Uh, I think Satya brought this growth mindset thinking. In fact, the growth mindset, it's written about it, multiple books. There's an author called Carol Dweck. So I think in the context of parenting, Satya heard about this growth mindset philosophy and said, okay, can I use this philosophy? By then, Microsoft had somewhat lost its ability to take risks. We were becoming conservative. We had succeeded so exceptionally well in the early years that we were somewhat afraid to take any bets that could risk our previous success and had gotten into a bad place. So this growth mindset essentially says that you can take your self-worth and put it on the line. You don't have to sit there and consider something a failure. In fact, there's a school in Chicago that does not hand out a fail grade. So it's either a pass grade or a not yet grade. When you say not yet, which means you're not yet succeeded. So on like if you kind of go back and look at 2014, that's when we had lost our position in the mobile phone market. We were in fact even ahead of the iPhone. We were working on the Windows phone, but we gotten it wrong so spectacularly. So Satya, I think, came back and helped us like understand that culturally we really need to not look at setbacks as failure moments, but as learning moments. And we talked about this learn it all mindset versus a know it all mindset. Imagine going to a meeting and say, you know what, I know it all, and then you're not listening to the people who may have another point of view. In fact, one of the big cultural transformations was we did something called the 1 week hackathon. For an entire week, the entire company was hacking, right? We were building new tech, we were growth hacking our business. And that, I think there's also this quote about the industry while it respects tradition, it really values innovation. And the company then had gotten into that. And I think the biggest shift was, how many of you remember Microsoft loves open source? Microsoft, we were in the Linux conference, and Satya, as a CEO, out there kind of talking about our entire relationship with open source. And it's transformative. Today on Azure, we deploy more Linux virtual machines than Windows virtual machines. I know this because we count. Okay, I build Azure Migrate that helps us bring more machines into Azure. And we have every open source tech out there. You'll have an Azure, you'll have Azure Kubernetes Services, AKS, right? Like we have embraced open. And that mindset shift, that cultural shift, I think was at the core of this reinvention.
Wow, amazing.
Oh, thanks, Charu. Bish, can I say a few words to Charu? because I asked that question, and some of people are missing out their names in that field in Slido. I mean, I didn't intend that to be anonymous. So, Charu, I was 1 year junior to you, and we were in the same hostel. So, and I still remember you being very enthusiastic and energetic. And so many thanks for answering that question.
Thank
Super.
you, and so lovely to meet you, Vijaya.
Yeah, same here. Huh?
Let's connect.
Yes, definitely. Thanks.
So the last two questions, Charu. By the way, the live polls. One of the questions in the poll was how is the program going so far? An overwhelming 75% say it's excellent. That is the highest I put in the ranking there, and remaining people said very good. So you're in the top two categories. 3/4 of the audience think it's an excellent program, and 1/4 that it's a very good program. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So audience, the next question from Ravi Chandran. What is the current focus on responsible AI/ethical AI at Microsoft?
It's a great question, and I think I somewhat addressed that. So we fundamentally believe at Microsoft that we need to keep humans at the center of all our innovation, right? Even with all the transformation that's happening with AI, if the goal is not to replace the human, but to amplify human ingenuity. And the way we think about responsible AI is really around 5 or 6 big principles, right? Around inclusion, around fairness, transparency. You want to give transparency to people on how a particular AI model arrived at its decision making, accountability, right? So we've created this responsible AI set of principles for the last many years. We are influencing the government also on responsible AI, and every product that we build goes through what we call a responsible AI review, right? Like we walk through. We actually have champs or we're champions in the team that go learn these responsible AI principles and make sure that all the exit criteria for a product meet those responsible AI checklists. Again, all this because we think that that level of safety and transparency is crucial. So we build this the right way. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
Yeah,
Super.
sure, it answers. Thanks, Charu.
So the last question of the day comes from Miss Kaushalya. So I allow her to ask the question since it's the last question. Kaushalya, do you want to unmute and ask the question, please?
Uh, yes, sir. Thank you very much. Hi, Charu. Thank you so much. Your session was very enlightening and so structured that we could learn a lot. And there was so much to note down. Literally, my notepad is overflowing. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Vish, for organizing it as well. My doubt was, how do you keep up with the tech advancements amidst balancing work? And even if you keep up with the advancements, you'll have to assess the business potentials, right, and channel your focus towards a few of them. One of the thing which I could see was you use the Gartner hype cycle. Other than that, like, how do you handle this query?
It's a great question, Kaushalya. So happy to meet you, and thank you for bringing a very pertinent question to as the last question for the session. I think the keeping up happens when you definitely want to understand where the industry is headed. Maybe reading competitive research. I do like competitive research. I feel like it's a good indication of where things are. I also like pay attention to what startups are doing. The startups are usually ahead of the hype cycle. They usually really are paying attention to, and like in our case, the OpenAI example is one such big bet, right? Like OpenAI was so ahead of the game. The thing that I would recommend as a person, like what you can do personally, is you want to be hands-on. You want to kind of play with like new tech. You want to understand, okay, how is this going? And be curious. Have a group of people in the company or maybe in the industry that you're just talking about the stuff without necessarily, there's no agenda for that. It's a coffee chat, right? You're not trying to gain anything other than like a perspective, perhaps. So I think being curious and ultimately, Kaushalya, it's about listening to customers. Customers usually won't tell you what to build next, but they're usually telling you what are their unmet needs. So you want to constantly think about, okay, what are the needs that are unmet by the tech out there, and figure out if you can build something that can hopefully meet that unmet need. So that would be my kind of guidance.
Super.
Thank you very much. It was very insightful. Thank you.
So, Charu, with that, we come to the end of the Q&A session. Just a few closing thoughts from me, and then, folks, a couple of requests from me. One is, This program has been running for the last 2 years. This is the 24th program in the series. We plan to do it for a very long time. When I first started this program in 2021 August, my original audience were expectation was students, but for a lot of unknown reasons and known reasons, students are not coming as much as alumni. And in fact, more alumni joining the program and benefiting than the students. So I tried my best to engage students now, and I'm trying multiple new approaches, working with current students, etc. So if you guys do know students of CG, please encourage them to come to the program. They'll benefit a lot. Second thing is, when I first started the program, I just had a handful of names that I knew from my own professional network, being in the US, etc. And I had about 25 to 30 names of people who I thought would be good to have in the program as speakers, who are C-level people in very large corporations all over the world. Today, I have more than 600 CEG alumni I have on my list to put in this program. So it will go on for several years, as you can tell. At 12 a year, it's going on for 50 years. And it's adding. What is amazing to me is that all these people are amazing in their success they reached in their career. Every single company in the top 100 companies in the world, we have many CEGs. Every one of them. And I find the names and the titles and stuff they have there, and it's like outstanding. Yet we are not leveraging that, talent and the brain trust as much as we should, both from a college standpoint as well as an alumni standpoint. So it's my endeavor to use programs like this to try and bring them. We also run another program as part of CG Connect called CG Field Insights. Program structure is similar to this, except we bring in experts in a certain domain. So we had about half a dozen programs so far. People from cyber industry, people from uh, EV electric vehicles, people from sustainability, people from cryptocurrency, etc. All that. So we plan to do those kind of programs also. This is again, speaker will be a CG alumni, but they will be expert in a certain domain who come and talk about the domain in terms of its applicability, benefit for students, alumni, etc. All that. So watch out for those programs that is coming in regularly as well. And finally, I'm trying to communicate as much as I can across every possible social media channel I can think of. You guys have to help me in getting this message across to other CGNs who may not be in my list. So I would request all of you, when you get these programs, to please send it to your batchmates, your friends, your CGNs, etc. All that. And even if people from AC Tech and MIT, they're welcome too. I'm not going to be exclusive. You're welcome too, but let's keep it under the four main constituent colleges of Anna University. And the last request I have is that thank you very much for joining. I think it was a very good session, Charu. As I said, the feedback has been awesome. All 24 programs of mine have been very well received. So I would say that all my speakers so far have been superstars. And I think the luck streak is going to continue. I think knowing the quality of the people I'm looking at and putting them in the program, I certainly can expect that the same kind of thing will continue. So thank you so much for joining us in a very early morning on a Seattle summer, and I know that you'll be back in Hyderabad sometime. I would wish to catch up with you when you're in Chennai, whenever you are back in town for something. Lovely to meet you. We can share some experiences about how to bring up our children and how to get them married. That'll be help.
Okay, will do.
That'll be
And
that.
I'd love to come even kind of being on campus. I'd like to kind of come spend more time.
Excellent.
So please, I'll let you know when I'm in Chennai next. But I definitely want to kind of come.
Absolutely, I can.
Frankly, I look ahead, and this probably one of the most meaningful things I could do with my time. So I really do appreciate the opportunity, and you've just been fantastic. The way you communicate, I just admire your passion and what you bring for this community. Thank you for your leadership. I mean, it's just amazing to see you, and being one of our seniors, my huge respect to you and all our seniors in the group, and just wanted to say thank you for everything you do for all of us.
So all I can say, thank you so much, Charu. All I can say is that many individuals and many organizations in CEG are doing very good stuff. The unfortunate reality is that it doesn't get to be known by people. Discovery is a bigger problem. So what I'm also going to do, in addition to promoting my programs, is to try and promote programs of other organizations and individuals in CEG who are also doing great work. In the startup area in particular, we have lots of individuals doing amazing amount of work. A good example is my senior AJB, who's a 1984 batch. He's conducting boot camps for entrepreneurs and startups. He wants to actually share his knowledge of how to start a business and how to do a startup, etc. All that. Like that, there are many individuals who are doing great jobs. We want to bring them to the fore and try to use the forum. So I would request all of you to also join our portal cegconnect.com. I know it's yet another portal to sign in and get a password, etc. I know it's a little bit of a hassle, but please do join cegconnect.com. There you will see the other people who are joined. We have more than 600 individuals who are very senior people in that cgconnect.com portal today. Once you join the portal and have your own ID and password, you'll be able to connect with other CEGNs who are in the portal, and think of it like a mini social network, but only made up of CEG people. So please do join the CEG portal, and then we can see other programs there. And finally, the programs today, the recording of the program today will be available in the YouTube channel CEG Connect in the next couple of days. My friend Partha, who's a 2021 CEG alumnus, he's the one who's helping with all this IT needs. Wonderful job he does building the portal and doing all that. He'll be uploading that into the CEG Connect YouTube channel very soon. And if any of you have any suggestions, feedback, comments, criticism, any political statements you want to make, please feel free. You can send a note to me, or you can post it in our YouTube channel. We'll definitely respond to you with your questions, etc. We do want people to participate and tell us what is working well and what should be improved. The idea is to do continuous improvement here. So again, thank you so much, Charu, and all of you to join this program. We will see you next month. I have almost finalized the speaker for the next month's program. It will be announced very shortly. Thank you
That's
so
great.
much.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you for
Bye.
having me.
Bye. Bye.